If you like racing, don't move an inch. We have an entire evening of it lined up for you right here on ESPN. I'm Rick DeBrule, out in the Nevada desert about 40 miles north of Las Vegas, the site of the Mint 400. It is 4 laps, 105 miles apiece. Normally, it's a battle just to finish one of those laps. To win, these guys will have to finish 4 of them. That's coming up. Also tonight, from Martinsville, Virginia, the NASCAR Winston Modified Tour. The same series that trained drivers like Jeff Bodine and Ron Bouchard. That's not our only oval action, though. We'll be taking you out live to Gardena, California and Ascot Park, where Larry Nuber and Parnelli Jones will be bringing you small track, open wheel racing. That's all coming up tonight on Thursday Night Thunder. But first, the road to Indy. A preview of the drivers, cars, and engines to look for at this year's Memorial Day Classic. So don't go away. Thursday Night Thunder is about to begin.
For nearly 80 years, they have been coming to what is the world's largest sporting event. Some fans will tell you that they're the second and third generation of their families to make the annual pilgrimage to Indy. Rights to good seats are left in wills. Among the drivers, too, is the legacy of yet another generation to race here.
I never did see my grandfather race. Well, they said he was always real competitive and wanted to win, and that's kind of when I got in a race car. That's all I wanted to do was to win races and put your foot in it, I guess, and turn left is what everybody told me he said, so that's what I've tried to do.
Regardless of their backgrounds, for all the drivers, there is nothing like the Indianapolis 500.
Indianapolis is obviously the major race of the year, and, you know, our Super Bowl, so to speak, or whatever you want to call it.
I mean, it's one of my favorite times of year to go there for the whole month. Everybody's treated me great, and I look forward to always going back there.
When they give that command, I can't describe it. I mean, I don't know if it's the same for guys like Foyt and Andretti who have done it so many times. I have a feeling it is, but what's really, really exciting is that first parade lap. Because you don't have to prepare for anything. You can just soak it in at that point. And just to see the people, and everybody is up there cheering you on, wishing you well.
And so it begins, the chase for the racing world's most coveted prize. I'm Paul Page, on the road to Indy '89. The late Associated Press motorsports writer Blois Britt once told the story about the second person ever to buy a motor car. That person had one thing on his mind: to find the first guy to buy a motor car and have a race. The earliest drivers who came to Indy during the track's infancy faced different challenges than those of today. Sometimes it was dusty. Other times it was important that a friend come along as a riding mechanic. Drivers' uniforms have changed, too, from those early years of fashionable wear when the drivers could be described as nothing short of dapper. By the mid-30s, the dashing scarves and jackets had given 30s way to T-shirts and leather helmets. Today, the helmets are no longer leather, but highly sophisticated pieces complete with radio, and drivers orbit this legendary oval in space-age fire suits. In the early days, one set of tires usually lasted the entire race. Service was reserved for refueling and for when things went wrong, as they did here for Norman Batten in 1927. Engulfed in flames, Batten became the hero of the day when he rode his traveling inferno to the pits. Equipment available to crews of that era was limited, and it was not unusual for pit stops to take several minutes. This evolved into efforts by some teams to carry enough fuel in their cars to run the entire race without a pit stop. The last to achieve it were Johnny Mance and Jimmy Jackson in 1949. Today, for safety reasons, the cars carry only 40 gallons of fuel, and teams plan for at least 6 pit stops to complete the 500. These highly orchestrated maneuvers have been refined to a science. Even with tire changes, a good pit stop takes only 12 to 15 seconds. Nothing, however, has changed more than the machines themselves. The leader card team, fielded by Ralph Wilkie of Milwaukee, has experienced more than 30 years of changes since Leader Card won its first Indianapolis 500 in 1959 with the great Roger Ward at the wheel. The current team manager, A.J. Watson, was the chief mechanic for Ward's winning drive and has seen IndyCar technology advance from the roadsters of Ward's era to the sleek, aerodynamic rear-engine machines of today.
Back in '59, compared to now, see, we only had one chief mechanic and one stooge that we paid. Then we'd pick up a couple guys at the racetracks. And, of course, now you got to have somebody to build your motors. You got to have somebody, engineer, to tell you how to set it up, and aerodynamics and all that. But back then, the chief mechanic more or less did it all.
This year, for the first time, Leader Card will have veteran Pancho Carter in the cockpit at Indianapolis. Carter, who won the pole position for the 1985 race, was the 500 Rookie of the Year in 1974 and compares driving rear-engine cars in the early 70s with those of today.
The feel aspect of it, I think probably early on there was more driver ability involved because the cars just did not get a hold of the racetrack as well as they do now. And with the added horsepower that we had back then, you really had to concentrate on driving the car. And now you really got to concentrate on keeping your momentum up so that you don't lose any of the speed that you can build up. When you get a newer ground effects car a little out of shape, you lose a lot of the downforce, and obviously you're going to lose control of the car. Where with the other ones, you could, get them a little more sideways, get the car gathered back up, and be able to drive it a little more.
John Barnes, the chief mechanic for the Leader Card effort, is charged with preparing the team's new 1989 Lola chassis for competition. Electronics have become a major part of the preparation for all cars. And with the new Lola this year comes the so-called black box.
It's a computer, a mini computer, that actually represents the dashboard of the car. With the black box, you're going to be able to actually see on a printout of what the car's doing in the corner, how much time you spent in the corner, what the RPM was when you enter the corner and out, the same with the blower pressure, and also with ride height changes. So you can really make a much more educated guess as to what you need to do.
As a driver, realistically and honestly, I welcome this. This could only be an advantage. A real advantage could be the only one to possess this capability. The fact is, everybody has it. So what does this do? All it does is just elevates everything to the next notch. And that's what you're going to have. You're going to have a more competitive, closer field.
Computers have become a way of life in IndyCar technology. The late Jim Truman once said, when his True Sports team introduced the first electronic fuel metering system to the sport, "We made it with Radio Shack parts." Obviously, it's past that in today's IndyCar world. The next steps of progress beyond the Lola black box are being developed by a mystery man who has helped teams at Indianapolis on the QT for years. Most know him as Dr. Turbo.
On the one part, it does things for a driver that's important for a driver to know, and another other side of it, it does things that tells the crew people what's going on and the engineering people what's going on. To come back and say, well, look, this is what the problem was, and this is what I did to solve it, and now it's solved, and so here's your performance difference. And the fact that you'll be able to come in and plug the recorder into the car, and this thing will print you out, show you a graph or give you a printout, and it'll show you it worked or it didn't work. And you have a quick answer, and nobody can stand and argue with you for 3 hours about it and call their brother-in-law in Washington and see what he thinks about it.
Computerization of IndyCar performance became more than an idea in 1985 when Computer Power Systems developed a new unit. Ray Williams is the manager of the company's Edge project.
First system was pretty crude. It was very large and didn't have a lot of capabilities. Now it's a very compact, very reliable system with very sophisticated software that's very, very easy to use.
Technology aside, one element remains unchanged: the racing fever that overcomes all who gather about this landmark oval in May. The road to Indy began last fall at the season-closing race in Miami, where new rides and teams were already being formulated for another challenge at the Brickyard. One of the changes that has drawn considerable attention has put Michael Andretti on the Newman-Haas team with his father, Mario. It marks the first time ever for a father and son to be paired in the same IndyCar stable.
I'm looking forward to the season very much, and I think Michael is as well. We're thinking of the positives, and like everything else, obviously, that we're going to have to deal with some negatives perhaps as well. But I think as long as the scale tips toward a positive, I think we'll be all right.
Yeah, I think so. That's the big advantage, because we're very honest with each other. We don't have that competition within the team. You know, if I don't do well, I hope he does. Whereas if it was another driver, my biggest concern would be to beat that guy, not everybody else. Just make sure I beat my teammate. Where with us, it's different. We work together. And I think that's why together we can be stronger.
Replacing Michael Andretti at the Craco team is Bobby Rahal. In 1986, Rahal led True Sports to victory at Indianapolis, a win dedicated to Jim Truman, the car's owner, who died just weeks after the race. Leaving True Sports was a major decision for Rahal. In addition to the Indy win, he had celebrated 2 national championships with his True Sports family. Rahal shared his thoughts on the challenge and the change of leaving a team for which he had driven his entire IndyCar career.
You know, it's like leaving your family, really, to some extent. 7 years, having started it with Jim Truman, and, you know, struggling, finding sponsors, and then everything starts to come good, and it was always a good team to begin with. You know, we were all brand new to it and sort of learned as we went along. So it was difficult to leave, but I just felt maybe the time had come.
True Sports, after Rahal's departure, fields newcomer Scott Pruitt, a veteran road racer who comes to Indy for the first time. Prior to the start of the season, Steve Horn reflected on the switch.
Well, I think we're losing, but we're gaining as well. You know, we've had a long, successful relationship with Bobby. We're sorry to see him go, but all of us are really excited about Scott. We've done some testing, and I really think he's going to be a tremendous asset to us.
There have been other shifts as well. Tom Sneva, the gas man, who is a 3-time Indianapolis track record holder, joins Vince Granatelli Racing for another assault on the mark, this time with Buick power.
The Granatelli team's been working very hard on the engine development program, and reliability has really been the key and the weak link in everybody's mind. But we think we've closed the gap seriously on that, and I'm very excited about getting here and running that Buick V6 during the month of May.
Sneva's teammate for the 500 will be John Andretti, Mario's nephew, who made his first Speedway appearance in 1988.
Tom does extremely well here at Indy, and he knows how to put the gas pedal on the floor, I guess, i.e. that's why they call him the gas man. But he definitely knows how to get around this track. An 83 won the race here, so I'm looking for some help from him. With a 2-car team, you do have that edge of being able to ask the other guy, you know, what have you found in case you've had problems. Last year, when I had problems, I had nobody to ask but my family, and one was in a Chevy and the other one was in a March, so they had a bit of trouble being able to tell me exactly which direction to go.
Tom Sneva and John Andretti replace Roberto Guerrero at Granatelli. Guerrero has opted for a ride with Morales Autosports and a new Alfa Romeo engine scheduled to make its first appearance at Indy. The questions are, will it be ready? And if so, how ready?
If we go to Indy and everything is right, it's important to demonstrate that the engine will run consecutively on a day-to-day basis.
We ran the engine on a car for the first time a couple of weeks ago in Italy, and I was very encouraged. It ran very well, and we had no problems at all, so it's just a matter of getting all the little last details ready.
Team members are just as important to the overall effort as drivers. So it is that they, too, are part of the seasonal switches. The Porsche IndyCar effort is entering its 3rd season, and the team has been restructured in the wake of the tragic death of its leader, Al Holbert, in a plane crash last October. Derek Walker, the former team manager for the famed Penske team, has taken the reins at Porsche. With him are Peter Parrott, who served as chief mechanic for defending Indy champion Rick Mears the past 10 years. and Laurie Garish, who is the crew chief for Bobby Unser's victory ride at Indy in 1981. Walker talks about the team and its chances.
We've increased the team to compete with the opposition this year, which is obviously going to be pretty strong. We're working on a lot of things in trying to make the car and the engine better. We started late on this program, so obviously we're a little bit late with the car and developing, so there's a lot of things we've got to learn. We're just going to go in there and do the best we can with the time that is available. You know, you just can't give up on these things, but we've got a few things up our sleeve which I hope are going to pay off.
Drivers shuffle, teams change, and so do the cars, as all search for the combination that produces the fast way around. A look at the new cars and engines in a moment. As three-time 500 winner Johnny Rutherford once said, "I never saw a car go very fast without a driver, or a driver go very fast without a car." So the marriage of man and machine persists, chasing after perfection, but not without transition. Last year's winning machine, the Penske PC-17, has been updated and modified for 1989 to produce the PC-18. Both are creations of Nigel Bennett, the former Lola designer who moved to the Penske camp prior to the 1988 season.
Well, it's a totally new car, which we started designing last June. It uses very few common pieces of the previous car. It's just an evolution of the same ideas, same continuing line of development, but it needed a new car to do it.
This year, 3 teams have pooled their resources with the Judd engine, which was last year the sole province of the True Sports team. In addition, True Sports, Team Shearson, and Rayner are sharing a Judd development program, and Hemmelgarn Racing is working with the engine independently. Veteran driver Derek Daly has Judd power for the first time at Rayner.
All the testing that we've done, I would say it's strong and smooth and reliable. We did 800 miles on one of our engines, and it was good. I can't feel a lot more power, but then we didn't expect a lot more power. But it's more reliable, and it's a smoother engine.
5 years ago, Scott Brayton came to the Speedway with a Buick engine built by Jim Wright.
Well, it's been very exciting to be a part of it. We started running it in 1983, and of course in 85 we set the track record, set in the front row. 88 I got another 4-lap track record, and I think this year it's probably going to be the most exciting engine of all.
This month, Brayton is back at Indy with the engine, this time with the Dick Simon team.
I think that we're really well prepared. I know that the team is very enthusiastic. I'm excited about working with Dick, being a former driver. I think that the combination's going to be good. I think that we're going to be strong in May, and I really am excited about the entire package. I just look forward to the opportunity.
In 1988, Jim Crawford took the engine's progress a step further by leading 8 laps of the 500 with a Buick, the only laps not led by the Penske team. Jim Wright, the engine's original builder, is still shepherding the development.
Well, naturally, when we got that engine back and took it apart, we saw some areas that were still marginal. I mean, it finished the race, but there were some things that we had to do in the head gasket department and sealing the head gasket. But we've made quite a few changes this winter, but I don't think it's anything that's hurt our reliability, because the pieces are still the same pieces that we ran last year. It's just different rod ratio, which the engine actually, we feel like it's better this year than last year.
March Engineering, the English chassis builder, which has provided fast customer cars for the IndyCar community throughout the 80s, is playing a big part in the Porsche and Alfa Romeo engine programs. March has built a specially designed, one-of-a-kind chassis for each team to accommodate their individual power plants. At Porsche, Derek Walker calls it a cooperative project.
I think that's one of the good aspects of this deal, is really that it's a collaboration. Both companies are working together, and it's quite unique to see the Germans, the English, and the Americans all working together on one project.
A different March chassis will be used by Morales Autosports for its new Alfa Romeo engine. Morales missed the season's first 2 races last month, and team manager Johnny Caples talks about the effort to have his team's car up and running for the 500.
We know you can't just conceive an engine out of the clear blue sky and go out and dominate anything, because that's quite an accomplishment to do. Nobody's done it. Porsche hadn't done it. Roger Penske was in his 4th year with the Chevrolet before he became a dominant force on the Indy Trail last year. So we know these facts. The thing is, we do have a target date for Indianapolis in 1989. We would very much like to make that, and we must accomplish the developing and testing along the way to make that decision.
Preparing for the Indianapolis 500 and the rest of the PPG Cup National Championship Series has become a full-time, year-round effort. The technology combined to make IndyCar racing a big business. Today's IndyCar team comes to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway from shops throughout America, from Pennsylvania to California. Engineers and mechanics from the United States, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and elsewhere prepare cars which, without exception, are built in England. They come fully prepared with race shops on wheels. These transporters can carry 3 cars, pit equipment, spare parts, and everything that's needed for the challenge ahead. It's quite a contrast to the sport's early years, when a car may have been driven on the highway to the racetrack. Some of today's transporters even have offices and showers. Well, many teams have acquired Newell buses to further expand their self-sufficient atmosphere. They use them for hospitality, crew meals, and entertaining sponsor representatives. The buses, some of which preceded even John Madden's, are decorated and equipped to suit the most discriminating.
It's a very comfortable move from race to race. We travel very long distances, Indianapolis to here, and then we'll go back. But we'll leave Detroit later in the season, head out to Portland, Oregon, and then turn around and go back to the Meadowlands in New Jersey. So we have some pretty long rides. And it's a pleasure to sit in this thing and drive this wonderful machine.
If it's true, as the poet suggests, that men are but small boys growing tall, then my wagon is bigger than your wagon may translate to this: my bus is bigger than your bus. In a moment, you'll meet the power players and the long shots. Patrick Racing, now in its 20th season in the sport, is a major name in the industry. The team has 2 victories at Indianapolis, with driver Gordon Johncock in 1973 and 1982. Patrick team manager Jim McGee built his first Indy car with a friend in 1958, and he's seen the escalation in preparation and budget.
The cost of an IndyCar program in this day and age, with the competition that we have now, is somewhere in the area between $4 and $5 million. It kind of breaks down into the cars costing around $250,000, 10 Chevy engines around $1 million. By the time we put our team together with personnel, including the driver, the engineers, the mechanics, and the shop personnel, our marketing and public relations people, you're talking, $1.5 million. Travel, engine overhauls, transporter costs, you're looking at between $4 and $5 million.
In contrast to Patrick's big-ticket effort, others start small and grow. Tony Bettenhausen is the son of late former national champion of the same name, who lost his life at the Speedway in 1961, helping test a car for fellow driver Paul Russo. Tony Jr. made his first 500 field in 1981 and has developed several Indy campaigns as a privateer. His current project was formed with the aid of more than 40 shareholders, which provided the seed money to buy a car for the Speedway. Tony serves a variety of roles for the team, including part owner, team manager, sponsor seeker, driver, and treasurer.
When you do pay the bills and you do run the team and your team manager and so forth and so on, it's a big job, and it's really not the most advantageous thing you want to do, because you tend to worry about the money when you're driving the race car if there's not a lot of money there, and so it's got its pluses and minuses. On the plus side, there's some job security there.
Bettenhausen has made the 500 starting field lineup for 8 straight years. But a first-lap crash last year put his team in a bind.
It was really tough to swallow because with our type team, or any team really, whether you spend $5 or $6 million a year, you spend, you know, 600,000 like we did last year. It's a situation that you build and you plan and you get ready for Indy 8 months, 9 months, 10 months before May gets here. And to have it end so quick and have a $200,000 race car written off in the process, you know, if you got to be a big boy, you got to overcome it and go on.
At times, when the bank account runs a bit low, the team leases its car to another driver for an event, as it did for newcomer Dennis Vitolo last fall at Miami, leaving Bentonhausen in civilian clothes.
Car owner in this race.
While Bentonhausen has geared his team toward Indianapolis and a full 15-race season, others focus only on the Indy 500. It is the fulfillment of a lifelong dream that begins on the dirt track bull rings of the Midwest and California, or along the world's road racing circuits. Phil Kruger is one of those drivers who has fulfilled that goal with his own hands on the wrenches and the wheel. While working as a mechanic for other teams, he passed his rookie driver's test at the Speedway in 1981.
When I first got interested in racing, I was interested from the driving end. That's all I wanted to do. I started the mechanicking in pursuing of my driving, and all along I've always looked at it as, boy, if I could just concentrate on driving. Well, what's happened is I've concentrated on mechanicking more than the driving, and it's actually worked out as a better means to an end.
In his first 3 years at Indy, he crashed during practice or qualifying and failed to make the field. In 1986, with a little help from his friends, he built a year-old March around an even older engine. He surprised everyone at the Brickyard by qualifying 24th at nearly 208 miles an hour to make his first 500 field.
You know, that was the accumulation of a lot of years of coming up through small successes, small disasters. You know, when you put that much of yourself into something, you need to have some success. I mean, there are a number of guys that have gone to Indy for more than 1 year and never made the race. And you know, my heart really feels for them because I know that they have to carry that around. Some of them deal with it better than others. And a lot of those guys, it's not because of lack of talent, it's because of the circumstances. So I felt really fortunate just to make the race, just to be able to do it once.
After qualifying, the big names made sponsor appearances, played golf, and tested at Milwaukee. After Phil Kruger qualified, he did what many of us do after a day's work. He went home to mow the lawn.
You know when you drive on the freeway and you pull off into a residential district and all of a sudden you're 20 miles over the speed limit and you feel like you're crawling? Well, when I clipped our oak tree mowing my lawn because I wasn't paying attention, that kind of tells you where I was at.
Last year, with a similar program, Kruger started 15th in the field and ran a steady pace all day to finish 8th. That finish, to his group, meant as much as a victory.
I'm sure that, for instance, that I would not have qualified for Indianapolis, the possibilities of running with George Walther or even getting a chance to talk to him would not have occurred or may not have occurred. So finishing high up obviously helps, but it definitely was a real shot in the arm, I think.
For 1989, Kruger is teamed with car owner George Walther for the first time. Walther's cars have run at the Speedway since the 50s, and as always, IndyCar teams need sponsors for funding. Walther and Kruger are throwbacks to the old days when a team would paint its car in the colors of a potential sponsor and tow it up to the front door of a corporate headquarters. Well, they did that recently in Indianapolis.
You know, George has done everything he can. He's bought probably the best car. He's bought 3 excellent engines. He's put money into the backup car program. He's given me more than I've ever had this year. But the lack of sponsorship is going to be the lack of operating capital. For instance, we're not going to be able to test like everyone else does.
Other new owner-driver combinations are more fortunate. Team Car International was founded by Keith Layton and Roman Kuzma to run an American Racing Series car. Both are veterans of Indianapolis, but this year marks their first time together with a Speedway entry, a Lola, with backing from Toshiba and Oracle Computers, and driver Randy Lewis.
I feel we'll be in the
part of the field. I can't say we'd be on the front row. I'd love to say that, but realistically, I think the Chevys and the upper echelon of Cosworth runners have got more horsepower, and there's the old saying in racing, you can't beat horsepower.
Our chances this year, I think, are going to be quite good. I think there's a lot of teams are going to be in a much stronger middle section. I think we're still going to have Penske's and Haas's at the lead, but I think there's going to be quite a few surprises this year. We have a lot of different manufacturers and engines, and as far as we're concerned, we have a good driver, we have a good team, and I think we got to look at longevity and lasting the races and gaining points that way.
The drivers, too, have to be prepared for the 3-hour, 500-mile grind. A look at them when we come back. Pancho Carter is one of the many Indianapolis-based drivers who have to stay in shape and expand their endurance.
You've got to keep yourself physically fit all year long. Play a little racquetball now. Not that I move the greatest, but it gives me a little bit of cardiovascular, workout. I've got some equipment at home and also belong to a health club to where I can more or less in the off season have enough time to do that. During the racing season, it seems like you're running, you're in the car enough that you can keep your upper body strength up.
For the first time in 15 Indianapolis 500s, Pancho Carter missed the 1988 starting field as mechanical problems and crashes plagued his month of May. He's back for another try, but it has been a long 11 months.
It was a pretty empty feeling to not have made the race, and having as much trouble as we'd had during the month. It was in a way a relief because you know, it had been pretty trying, but when race day came and it wasn't time to get suited up and get in a car, it was really kind of tough for me to go do the radio show because I at that point really didn't want to be there.
For Dick Simon, the 1989 Indianapolis 500 figures to be a new experience. He made his first starting lineup here in 1970 and has followed it with 16 more 500 starts. Throughout the 80s at Indy, he has reestablished himself each year as the oldest driver ever to exceed 200 miles an hour on a closed course. At 55 for this season, he has announced his retirement as a driver and will leave the helmet and gloves to his successors on his team, Ari Lyondike and Scott Brayton.
I don't feel I've retired from racing, and at this point we've gotten our team up to a point where I think, from looking at it from a business standpoint, it's probably the most important thing for our sponsors and our team that I manage the team from within the pits and from overseeing it rather than trying to do it from the car.
His retirement as a driver, however, must be accompanied by an asterisk. As he is for nearly 2 decades, Simon arranged for his United States Auto Club driver's license again this year. He was asked if he might still saddle up.
Obviously, loving to drive like I do, I can't really answer that. I just like to maintain my license so that I can get in the car, get some of my aggressions out, and maybe it's during tests, but during the races themselves, I have resolved in my mind I'm going to just manage the team, and I have no desire at this moment to change that. I don't know if it'll get hard by the time we get to Indianapolis.
Okay. The winter months are busy ones for an Indy champion. Rick Mears won his 3rd 500 last year, and as he knows from his previous victories, a triumph at Indy makes for a long trail of personal appearances, media interviews, and sponsor projects. Mears has also done much of the testing on the new Penske PC-18, and the not-so-whispered results of that testing make him the man to beat this month. In the car's first sessions at Phoenix, Mears turned an unofficial lap at 20.9 seconds around the Desert Mile, 0.8 of a second below the track record. He used the same Chevy Indy V8 power that produced 14 winners in 15 races during 1988, including his own Indy victory. Mears is also famous for a race that he didn't win at the Speedway. The year was 1982.
Obviously, I hated to lose that race. That'd be another
we'd have under our belt. But I was very happy with, you know, at the end of the race, it was a fun race.
197 laps complete, only 3 to go. Both drivers are creating a new legend by racing at speeds challenging 200 miles an hour. Mears closes to within inches of Johncock. There's the white flag. It's unbelievable. So close together, it looked like a dead heat. Mears tries. Oh, how he tries. But this 500 belongs to Gordon Johncock.
Gordon Johncock staved off Mears by 16/100ths of a second to win the closest 500 in history. 3 years later, Johncock announced his retirement and sat out the 85 and 86 seasons. But he was back in 1987. Last year, Johncock was the last driver bumped from the 500 field.
It was kind of a last-minute put together of a team, and we really weren't very well organized. Just nothing went right last year, and we really didn't get up to speed like we should have got up to speed, and just unfortunately we were bumped out the last 3 or 4 minutes of the day.
This year, he's nailed down a ride for the 500 with Hemmelgarn Racing and familiar STP sponsorship in a bid to recapture the glory of 1982. The Indianapolis Motor Speedway has attained a lofty pedestal in the history of American sports lore. It was built on the northwest side of Indianapolis in 1909, the vision of Carl G. Fisher. The Speedway was opened as a crushed stone and tar track, but accidents during the initial events convinced management that a paved surface was necessary for safety, and work was started immediately. More than 3 million bricks were put in place. In 1927, war hero Eddie Rickenbacker and some associates bought the track, and in 1937, parts of it were resurfaced with asphalt. The Speedway changed hands again in 1945, with the late Tony Holman of Terre Haute, Indiana, taking the reins. Johnny Rutherford, who shoots for his 25th Indy starting field this month, has competed throughout much of the Holman era.
I shudder to think where racing might be today had it not been for Tony Holman and the Holman family. What a tremendous gentleman. And for him to have stepped up and bought the Speedway, and it's because of him it's where it is today.
With Holman at the helm, the Speedway began the major push to its place in history. Profits from the race were turned back into the facility year after year, and gradually the track surface was paved entirely with asphalt, except for a 36-inch strip of bricks at the start-finish line, left to commemorate the Speedway's tradition. Following Tony's death in 1977, Mary Fendrick Holman became the chairman with Joseph Cloutier as the president. Mary Holman George, daughter of Tony and Mrs. Holman, took over as chairman of the Speedway last year, continuing the family heritage, which has preserved the Speedway for nearly 45 years.
They're great. Yeah, they've been so good with the racing throughout the years that I've been there. I've been there for 10, 11 years now, and you know, as many years they've been there before that. You know, they've really, you know, have probably helped make IndyCar racing what it is today.
Tony George, the son of the chairman, is learning the operational ropes of the world's biggest auto racing facility and embarking on a driving career at the same time. He previously raced in Super V ranks, but last fall, George decided to move up a step and enlisted the help of a friend.
We're planning on probably campaigning maybe an ARS car for Tony. That's what he's wanting to do, and I feel like maybe I can help him a little bit and look after him, and probably be like my own son out there running. I'll probably be more nervous when he's out there than when I'm out there.
The mantle Tony assumes is a logical one, for indeed, the Holman family is synonymous with motorsports.
Well, they mean an awful lot to me. They mean, they're just like my family, I feel, because when I come back there, you know, I live with Mary George, and watched Tony when he arrived in this world, and Nancy, George, and all of them. So just feel like I'm part of their family, and we've just been friends for years, and the Holmans have been terrific to me, and they're the ones that put AJ where he is today.
Well, the Holman family is very important to my family. I think we have the same values and same principles, and really they're the first family of auto racing, and we've been known to be, the Unsers have been, but in reality it's really the Holmans that have put racing on the map in the whole world.
For Unser Jr. and the rest of the drivers, their favorite part of the Speedway property presents a new challenge this month. The entire 2.5-mile oval has been repaved, and with it comes thoughts of record speeds. In addition, the pit road has also undergone a complete resurfacing, which many feel will make it safer on race day.
Well, I've just had an opportunity to see it and talk to some of the other drivers. I think that it's beautifully done, and from what I've heard, it's been fantastic.
I think the way they've done the track, you're going to be able to use more of the track now.
You'll have to do at least 210 to even make the race this year. That's, I think, what the resurfacing has done.
The pavement's conducive for faster speeds. You'll be able to see your pit a little bit better because you're not bouncing around.
But at least you'll be able to be on the ground, you know, and probably have a lot more control. Last year you go through there not much slower probably, but the car was bouncing off the ground so badly. You know, if somebody pulled out in front of you, you'd have a real hard time slowing down. So even though it's smoother, I think it's going to be safer.
The teams, the drivers, the Speedway are all ready for the tradition, the challenge, and the speed, and the world's attention for the month of May.